Last year, Nigeria witnessed the most devastating floods in a decade, which caused more than 600 deaths with nearly 1.3 million displaced. Heavy rains combined with poor urban planning made parts of the country more susceptible to flooding. This, among other issues, will be our focus on this week's edition of Green Angle, which also highlights activities that shaped 2022. Welcome. I am Esther Makwariola. It was a difficult period for many in 33 out of 36 states in the country, battling with the devastation of the worst flooding in a decade. The floods had been attributed to above-average rainfall and an overflowing dam in neighboring Cameroon. But the situation was also made worse by poor drainage infrastructure.
Weeks after the flooding began, the situation seems to have worsened as houses and roads in various communities across Bayelsa State are now completely submerged. Some locals have been forced to set up makeshift camps on bridges and highways to escape the ever-increasing water. They decry the non-availability of governmental aid and call for immediate evacuation to higher grounds.
Flood is still coming up. This place you see now is just a temporary habitation of people, a temporary place for the people to occupy. But the flood is still coming up and we don't know where to run to. So we need total evacuation of our people from this very place they are now.
Look at how men and women, children are suffering. There's nowhere we can even stay at this moment. No relief materials. Look at all crops have been damaged and all that. So we need the aid of government. Then give us a settlement where we can settle and be free from this flood.
In Yenagoa Metropolis, a 16-year-old boy has lost his life to the surging flood. Other residents complain of shelter and food as their houses and shops have also been flooded.
We are staying outside. We slept here yesterday, and at least we will sleep here today again. But if government will come to our aid, at least I believe that we will also where to sleep.
Critical of the state and federal government's preparations before the flood, renowned environmentalist Maurice Alagua calls for immediate intervention to ameliorate the plight of the people.
I think the state government needs to do more in terms of environmental impact assessment and go into the different methods depending on the environment to tackle this issue.
With the number of farmlands, businesses and manpower lost so far, fear looms over the severe hardship ahead if the situation is not properly managed.
At least 7 states have been hit by floods this year. This is the worst after 2012 when floodwaters killed 363 people and displaced more than 2 million people. Jigawa, Kogi, Anambra, Katsina, Adamawa, Nasarawa and Bayelsa states are currently dealing with the effect of the floodwaters that have forced them out of their homes. In Jigawa state alone, the death toll is more than 100, 17 in Anambra and 6 in Kogi. Already the rising water levels have displaced more than 1.4 million people across the country. The situation in Kogi is also there. Before the flood waters started to recede, a portion of the Abuja-Lokoja highway was completely cut off, leaving passengers and motorists stranded for days. The flood water has taken its toll on the road. This is the chaos on the Abuja-Lokoja highway. Man-hour is lost daily as travelers ply this strategic link road between the north and the south in Lokoja. Inside Lokoja, the capital of Kogi State, the devastation caused by torrential rain has led to the destruction of property, farmlands and livelihood. Saadu Halilu takes us on a canoe to what used to be his home. He lived here with his wife and 3 children. When the flood hit, he could not save most of his property, but he was lucky to escape with his family from the surging waters. He paddled through water on what used to be dry land, a pathway to his house.
The flood waters began to rise suddenly. We were lucky. Some of us know how to swim. That is why we did not get drowned.
The sight of houses submerged, livelihood destroyed, and the stories of affected residents around here gives one a clear picture of the devastation. Halilu is just one out of the 1.4 million Nigerians directly dealing with the devastating effects of flood. His house is one of the 90,000 homes across the country, either partially destroyed or completely destroyed. He now has to stay in this makeshift ramshackle until the flood waters recede and it is safe for him and his family to return home. Mohammed Tukura is from a predominantly fishing family. He was appointed as the custodian of the water, Serikin Ruwa. He sits outside his house every day and looks at the river that was once his source of livelihood but has now overflowed its banks and destroyed property. He has a rather interesting perspective on the devastation. He believes the flood is a consequence of bad human behavior and it is nature's way to pay back.
But this thing that happened with us now, we know it's from God and we believe in God. We can't say and water is angry with human being. No, it's God. It's our hand that fetch all this wahala because we are a sinner.
The flood was not unexpected. There have been several flood warnings issued by the government and other relevant agencies, but affected communities are always not prepared when the flood waters come into their homes.
We release warnings early, but people don't heed to that warning.
In this camp, the lack of potable water, good sanitation and hygiene put the internally displaced persons here at risk of contracting communicable diseases. Nafisa delivered a baby girl after she fled her home with her family to seek shelter in this camp packed with hundreds of displaced persons. 2 other women in this camp have also been put to bed and have to raise their newborns in the most uncomfortable situation.
I will do my best to give my daughter a good life. The condition here is not conducive. We are really suffering. It was a painful experience when I had to run away with my pregnancy. Thank God for safe delivery.
In this temporary camp, the displaced persons are united by circumstance. They cohabit peacefully and have even become fond of themselves. They hope the flood waters will completely recede, but they know that life after the flood will be tough. The government is warning again that the worst is not yet over. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management says more states are still at risk and advised them to heed the early flood alerts.
There was enough warning and information about the 2022 flood. Unfortunately, this is where we are. It appears that this warning was not heeded to.
The federal government is also concerned about the impact of this flood on food security, as more than 76,000 hectares of farmland have been partially destroyed, while about 70,000 hectares of farmland are completely destroyed across the country.
Elephants play a vital role in the ecosystem, spreading essential soil nutrients at a continental scale, helping to disperse seeds and creating spaces for plant species to grow. In this documentary series produced with Wild Aid, we took a trip to Omo Forest in Ogun State to catch a glimpse of some of Nigeria's forest elephants. In 2018, a herd of elephants left their habitat in Omo Forest, a tropical rainforest in southwest Nigeria, for Poaching, a border community close to Lagos State. The elusive forest elephants migrated from their stronghold after increased farming and hunting activities. The elephants, numbering about 2 dozen, were spotted on a major highway. But why did the elephants migrate from the forests? What pushed them out of their natural habitat?
Any activity that associated with deforestation, hunting, any illegal activity around the conservation zone undermine conservation efforts. In the year 2018, we have one of the major issues on the ground where we have encroachments into the core of this elephant habitats, so which force some of the groups out.
We are inside Omo Forest, home to Nigeria's critically endangered forest elephant. As you can see, I'm in the stronghold of the forest elephant, and I'm close to one of its footprints, which is about 60 centimeters wide. It's not even up to the size of my feet right here, but if I take it in, you get to see just how the width of the elephant's feet. Omo forest elephants are an elusive cousin of the savanna elephants found in Yankari Games Reserve in Bauchi State. This gentle creature plays a major role in the forest, which benefits the environment. They strip trees of their bark, dig for roots in the soil, chew on leaves, munch on tree branches. But these seemingly destructive activities help preserve the forests and store more carbon in their trees. When they move through the forest and feed on trees for food, they reduce the density of smaller trees and plants, causing an increase in the number of larger trees in the forest, which leads to more carbon being stored in the forest. A 2019 study found that elephants' destructive activities help boost the overall amount of carbon stored in the Central African rainforest.
Elephants and forests provide a huge, very important service that we all need to fight climate change. They're gardener of the forest because they can plant trees, they plant the new generation of trees. And the interesting thing about carbon is that many of the seeds that are very large, that are only dispersed by elephants, they come from very large trees that hold a lot of carbon. So they contribute to carbon by dispersing seeds, but in particular the seeds of these very large trees.
But despite their contribution to the environment, forest elephants are also threatened by illegal poaching. In the last 10 years, its population declined because they are continually being hunted for their tusks to supply a bustling ivory trade market in Asia, and Nigeria has become the transit hub for ivory trade over the last decade. Last January, the Nigeria Customs intercepted a 20-feet container that included more than 2,000 pieces of elephant tusks, weighing about 4,752 kilograms, worth 22 billion naira. And in July, the Nigeria Customs also intercepted 870 kilograms of ivory. The African forest elephant was recently listed as critically endangered by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, meaning their population is on the verge of being wiped out. Lagos State has a booming ivory trade and contributes to the declining number of elephants in the forests. A 2018 snapshot survey of the illegal ivory market in Lagos revealed about 94 outlets, including popular hotels that engage in the illegal sales of ivory.
The population of elephants in Nigeria is on the verge of extinction. So we need to do
and to educate people. We need to be educated. We need to be, there's need for public awareness. We need to know the danger that is inherent in the exploitation of ivory, either in processing it, or either in using it, or either if you are the one even exploiting it. We have a group of people that currently they operate like a kind of a racket, or like a group that usually exploiting this material. Some of them need to be the full weight of the law needs to be used against them. Some of them need to be arrested. Some of them need to face some kind of punishment. And I think this one is going to create a kind of a deterrent. It's going to prevent them from further exploitation. But more than that, I think the large majority of people in Lagos State needs to be educated on the danger that is in the exploitation of wildlife resources.
These things, so we try to identify them and bring them on board so that they will be our eco warrior to defend the species that they.
Perhaps it will take much more than a few rangers in protecting what is left in one of Nigeria's largest forests, and the government doing all it can in enforcing the state's environmental protection laws. Green Angle returns in just a moment. Stay with us.
Illegal bushmeat is on sale in our cities, risking extinction and our health. We've become a centre for ivory and pangolin smuggling. So please report wildlife crime and say no to illegal bushmeat. And let's work together to win for Nigeria. Keep them wild, keep us safe.
Still on highlights of activities in the past year, countries including the United States and the EU for the first time agreed to establish a fund for nations vulnerable to climate disasters made worse by pollution produced by wealthy industrialized nations. However, little or nothing was done to phase out fossil fuels, which are the biggest source of planet-warming emissions that are causing the climate crisis. Creating a specific fund for the loss and damage marked an important point of progress at the climate conferences in Sharm el-Sheikh. Governments also agreed to establish a transitional committee to make recommendations on how to operationalize both the new funding arrangements and the fund at the COP28 this year. New pledges totaling more than $230 million were made to the Adaptation Fund. And these pledges are expected to help many more vulnerable communities adapt to climate change through concrete adaptation solutions.
I now invite the CMA to consider Sub-Item 6A, Report of the Adaptation Committee, and Sub-Item 6B, Review of the Progress, Effectiveness, and Performance of the Adaptation Committee. The SAPSTA and the SBI were unable to conclude their consideration of these matters, and they were forwarded to the CMA for further guidance. I requested the SAPSTA chair, Tosi Panyu, to undertake further consultations which have resulted in the draft decision before us. I now invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Report of the Adaptation Committee for 2022 and Review of the Progress, Effectiveness and Performance of the Adaptation Committee, contained in document FCCC/PA/CMA/2022/L10. Hearing no objections, it's so decided.
Although the Loss and Damage Fund may be a win to some, the outcome of the summit was a bit disappointing for other climate activists as world leaders failed to reach an agreement to phase out fossil fuels. Environmental activist and director, Health of Mother Earth Foundation, Nemo Bassi, shared his thoughts on the outcome of the climate summit held in Egypt.
I went to the COP without much expectations, and so I came away not terribly disappointed because I was already disappointed before going. That's a sad thing, sad situation to be in, and one could actually ask, why do you go there when you don't hope to get anything positive from it? But going there helps to put a lot of pressure on the system, and if we don't have that pressure from the outside, from the civil society, then of course the negotiators and politicians will just keep on doing what they're doing without caring what's really going on. So the sad thing about the climate, the COP that just ended in Egypt, is that although everyone agrees that climate change is caused mostly by the dependency, the burning of fossil fuels, the COP came away without even acknowledging this. But what needs to be done is to put more pressure on our national governments. We have to change our stories. Our governments have to recognize the fact that going to the COP and just hoping to get a little bit of finance would not solve this problem. Some nations had already started making pledges towards loss and damage. And we've seen before that even with the Green Climate Fund that set a target of 100 billion, the donations or contribution pledges by governments, the rich countries, have not added up to that amount. So that is still a fund that is not fully funded. Now with loss and damage, my worry is that some countries have also said that they would not accept any idea of liability. In other words, no, they don't want an idea that the loss and damage is being paid because they are liable. They are afraid of lawsuits that could come up that will compel them to meet up their obligations due to the harm they've committed and they've inflicted on poorer, vulnerable nations. This is a sad thing about this. When the rich countries who have polluted the atmosphere, who have driven global warming, say they don't want any sense of liability, then we can't expect too much from loss and damage. What some of us are asking for is a climate debt that recognizes the fact that somebody created this problem, somebody is still pumping more carbon into the atmosphere, somebody has historical responsibility and liability, and that should not be ignored.
And that's it on the show. Thank you so much for watching. If you have comments or stories you'd like to share with us, you can send it to my Twitter handle at @TVC. We'd love to hear from you. Until I come your way next time, remember, together we can build a sustainable world. I am Esther Makwariola. Bye for now.